Trump. So we talk about it across asset classes. What will the implications be when it comes to infrastructure? We haven't had any big infrastructure spending promises, so far as I know, coming from the president-elect. Let's find out with what Billy Leung from Global X ETFs is keeping his eye on now. Billy, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Am I wrong? I don't recall having heard, massive infrastructure spending promises coming from the new president.
I think you're correct, and this is the whole basis of the whole, U.S. infrastructure development investment case, because everything still remains the same. So I think we spoke about this probably about a few months ago when the Global X Infrastructure Fund first came on. And the thesis at that time was because US infrastructure needed an upgrade, they needed an improvement, and they needed rebuilding, and that's still ongoing. We also saw at that time the tailwind was there's a lot of regulations and bills and laws, bipartisan acts, which were supportive tailwinds of the infrastructure development in US as well. And we also saw a lot of upgrading in terms of technologies that were required for infrastructure, and these still hold. But to your question is, when Trump comes in, what are the implications on US infrastructure? And you're correct in saying there's nothing new, but what we have to notice is a few things. The first thing is a lot of the infrastructure outstanding projects in the US were actually initiated by Trump during his first term. So he's likely going to push it ahead and see it through. So this is number one. Number two is Trump is highly aggressive on tariffs, which means that he'll need to find growth from somewhere, which is likely going to be domestic. And so it's likely going to come from US infrastructure development. So we are already seeing a lot of projects being pushed forward. And lastly, I think Trump is also very pro-growth, pro-business, and pro-tech as well. And this is also supportive of the infrastructure upgrade. So there are some things happening, but it's just not being mentioned.
Yeah, so we're not talking only about roads and bridges, which the States does need, some work to be done in that area, but we're talking about green infrastructure as well, correct?
You're exactly right, and I think when we look at the U.S. infrastructure development, it's not just about utilities and assets and these buildings are physically there. It's actually about upgrading them to make them more sustainable and much better. And for example, one company that's actually found in one of our U.S. infrastructure ETF portfolios is a company that does the cooling systems for a lot of the new infrastructure, because infrastructure now is not just about building new railroads, bridges, it's also about data centers as well. And there's a lot of cooling required for there as well.
And so with this infrastructure ETF, I'll allow you to talk product, it's got exposure to tech companies in there as well, or the services?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because whenever we look at this Global X Infrastructure ETF or PAVE, we explain to investors that we're trying to look for a more modern way of investing in US infrastructure, which means that we still have to look at the raw materials that goes into it. We have to look at the infrastructure construction machine that goes into it, but we also have the new technology that goes into it. For example, like I mentioned, automation that goes into it, cooling systems, and there's a lot of systems and software that's involved in building new infrastructure right now. So these three types of companies are included and should be included in US infrastructure.
And so there is tech exposure in there.
I would say they're modern infrastructure technology, I would call them. Not tech per se as we know it.
Well, not like Microsoft and Amazon necessarily, but
yes.
I guess most companies do have technology at their heart right now as well. Okay, so when you're thinking about time frame, so this is not like a 1 year, 2 year project. This is more like a decade long sort of spend.
At least. I mean, if you look at the US infrastructure development for the past, I think, 20 years on an inflation adjusted basis, the investment's actually been stable, which means that we haven't been going anywhere on an inflation adjusted. So we need to recoup that 20 years loss. So I would say that this investment thesis is more of a multi-decade thesis. And a lot of investors would ask me, hey, Billy, why now? What's the urgency now? We know about this theme. And the interesting thing is, probably going back to your question about Trump, is that we are entering a period where we're seeing a lot of mega projects breaking ground, a lot of the projects being pushed forward. So just to give you a number, for example, in the last year, about 20 to 30 mega projects have been broken ground. And mega projects are ones that are over $1 billion US. And next year, 2025, we might see over 80 of these mega projects breaking ground next year. So we are entering into a so-called peak season of US infrastructure projects.
How has this PAVE, I think you said it was called, Nice name. How's it been performing?
It's been doing okay. I mean, we launched it in June this year. The performance has been around 25% since then, outperforming the MSCI World about 11%. So it's been doing well and in line with exactly what we're seeing right now. US infrastructure ongoing. We're seeing more spending. We're seeing the bills supporting it, and obviously the projects being pushed forward, like I mentioned.
So 2025 is nearing an end, Billy. At Global X ETF, do you think there's going to be a lot? Is product development in the ETF space going to accelerate in 2025?
Oh, definitely. I think, in terms of planning, we are seeing a lot of, innovative products that we're seeing, across asset classes. And this is definitely one of the things we're planning right now, not just for next year, even for the next 5 to 10 years.